Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to spend the next hour going over the CALS strategic plan, which lays out the vision that we have for the college for the next years as we go forward here. I want to thank everybody for joining us. I'm Zeke Barlow. I'm going to help moderate the conversation today. Alan Grant, as always, is going to be our leader and talk about the plan and sort of how it was created. We're joined also today by Tom Thompson, our Associate Dean, who spearheaded the strategic planning process, as well as Siobhan Thorpe, our Director of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity, who's going to talk about some of the next steps going forward here. Before I turn it over to Alan, I just want to encourage everybody to, they can follow along with the strategic plan. It is now posted on the CALS website underneath the About section. It is also linked to right above the video here. It should be a link to it as well. And you'll be able to submit questions via an anonymous Qualtrics survey at the link above there. And we're going to hold questions till the end, but we encourage people to go ahead and type them as we go along. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dean Alan Grant to talk about our vision for the future. Alan?
Well, great. Thank you, Zeke. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning for the presentation of the college's new strategic plan. As Zeke said, I'm joined by Tom Thompson, our Associate Dean and Director of CALS Global, and by Siobhan Thorpe, our Director of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity. Tom has been serving as the coordinator of the overall strategic planning process, and Tom's going to help me present the new plan, and then Siobhan will be providing an example of one of the many implementation plans that are the important next steps of the strategic plan. So if we could go to the next slide, Tim, thank you. So I think you are all aware of the university strategic plan, and we've been using the university plan as a framework for developing a college strategic plan. The university's plan is known as the Virginia Tech Difference, Advancing Beyond Boundaries, and it was developed a couple years ago and is meant to be a continuous planning process. So a bit different than some of the other strategic plans that have been used in the past. And in this continuous planning process, the goals and the metrics and the milestones are monitored. Existing priorities continue. Some new strategic priorities are developed. And then there's a continual assessment of activity. And metrics and progress towards the milestones continues to be measured. And again, we're using this university plan, which is posted on the university's website as a framework for the college and unit plans. If we could go to the next slide, please. So we began a college branding process over 2 years ago to begin identifying our overarching goal of the college. And in anticipation that we were going to be developing a new strategic plan in the near future. We're a land-grant university, so at the core of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences is the land-grant mission of teaching and research and extension. And by committing to the land-grant mission, CALS is positioned well to create thriving communities in Virginia and around the globe. And the premise is that if we have a thriving college, then we can create thriving communities. And a thriving college means that we have world-class faculty and staff, a diverse faculty and staff, a creative faculty and staff, talented and forward-looking students, state-of-the-art facilities, and engaged stakeholders and alumni. And if we can achieve all of these, then we'll have impact and we can help create thriving communities around the world. So if we could go to the next slide. So how do we help communities thrive? Well, we have key strengths in the college, and those are listed on this slide. They include things like food, health, environment, and economy. And think of these broadly. So when you see food, what we're really talking about is it's all of the work that we're doing around the food system, including programs in ag and food production, processing, distribution, marketing, consumption. and even the behavior of consumption that connects the food system to our health and well-being. Health includes our expanding programs in the health sciences, our human health programs here in Blacksburg, but also the growing academic health science center in Roanoke. Health includes our extensive work in the plant and animal sciences too. And the college has a number of programs in environmental sciences and resources, including programs to help the environment, to preserve our natural resources, and to ensure that things like ag and food industries are environmentally sustainable. So the idea here is that if we have healthy food systems, we have healthy people, we'll have healthy environments, and we'll have healthy economies that will allow our communities to really thrive. If we can go on to the next slide. So if the college can take these strengths and channel these strengths to some areas of emphasis, then we can begin to tackle big challenges. And if we can do that, then we'll continue being a leading college in the agriculture and life sciences. And in this slide, you'll see examples of some of these emphasis areas, and they're depicted in this slide by the revolving small planets on the periphery of the diagram. And we've identified 5 such areas in this slide, but we recognize that other areas exist across the college and can fit into these strengths in various ways. For example, the college contributes to the area of comprehensive health and wellness of our citizens and of our plants and animals through the infectious disease, vector-borne disease, and drug discovery programs that are being conducted throughout the college and with our colleagues. The college has developed research and extension education programs to help communities address substance abuse in urban and rural communities. And our faculty members are leading programs aimed to increase understanding of eating behaviors and physical activity behavior. And they're studying the linkages between lifestyle choices and chronic health and disease. Another example in this diagram is the work that's being done to address community empowerment here in Virginia and around the world. We do this in rural communities, urban economies, addressing unique challenges involving families and businesses and communities, whether it's a rural community here in Southwest Virginia, an urban community in Fairfax County, or even a developing community in a place like Senegal. We prepare workforces, we prepare leaders of a changing workforce, and we provide global opportunities for our faculty and students so that they are better prepared to address challenges back here in Virginia. We've got other areas on here included, things like predictive environmental solutions, cultivating lifelong learners, resilience and productivity through innovation. And through these programs, as we conduct these programs, we want to provide students with a hands-on real-world education so that they have this portfolio of experiences available to them, such as internships, meaningful work experiences, research, whether that research is on campus or off campus, perhaps at a agricultural research and extension center or in partnership with an industry, educational programming at a local extension office, and also study abroad. These are all experiences that ultimately transform students into what we call engaged alumni who are better prepared for the world and its challenges. Through innovation, we strive to promote resiliency and productivity. We are committed to investments in our research programs so that we can contribute to technologies of tomorrow. Research serves our industry, but it also prepares our students for future careers that are essential for the ag and life science industries. An example is our Smart Farm Innovation Network. It's an initiative in which we can enhance our public-private partnerships, and we can use our agricultural research and extension centers as technology centers in close collaboration with our industry partners to evaluate new technologies and new practices, and develop the future technologies that will allow the industry to thrive. We can go on to the next slide. In order to accomplish all of these aspirations, we have to continue to make investments. So we have to continue investing in our students, providing scholarships that give them access and opportunities, and program support to offer every student that what we referred to earlier as that full portfolio of experiential learning. We have to continue investing in our faculty and staff, attracting and recruiting and retaining a diverse faculty and staff who believe in the land-grant mission and are passionate about educating our students and conducting discovery research and translating research findings to help solve challenges and issues. And we have to keep investing in our facilities. The infrastructure has to be attractive, but the important thing, it has to be functional, and it has to be functional if we want to be a destination for students and faculty and external partners. We also know that we can't accomplish all of this alone, and our alumni, the friends of the college, our industry, our government partners are all important for the college to help carry out its land-grant mission. So if we could go back to ahead to this next process slide here. So we took all of this information that we had been collecting through the branding exercise, the retreats involving internal and external stakeholders of the college, and we developed a process for developing a strategic plan for the college. And we wanted a process that included representation from our various stakeholder groups. So in late summer 2019, we formed a steering committee and 4 working groups. These working groups were composed of about 10 members, and we charged these groups to develop strategic priorities and goals and milestones. And we'll show the members of these groups later in the presentation. But these working groups worked through the fall and winter months to develop goals and milestones for each of the priorities. The working groups, they sought input from various internal stakeholders through surveys and listening sessions. And the university's Office of Strategic Affairs helped us with gathering these data. The leadership team of the college sought input from external stakeholders. And by the spring of this year, the working groups had drafted a plan. And then that was finalized through additional meetings of the working groups with the steering committee and the college leadership team. In addition to numerous faculty and staff that served as members of these working groups and committees, I also want to acknowledge Erin McCann and Lauren Henson from the university's Office of Strategic Affairs. Erin and Lauren were very helpful throughout the entire strategic planning process, and they continue to work with the college. And of course, many thanks to Tom Thompson, who served as the overall coordinator of the process. If we could go to the next slide. So this slide is our vision statement. You'll note that we did not change the vision statement. We felt that the current statement accurately reflects the college's vision, and it includes this thriving communities at its core. And I'm going to read it. We address current and emerging issues in agriculture and life sciences by building on the land-grant commitment of developing leaders and creating and sharing knowledge through diverse hands-on applications that ultimately help communities thrive. So at this time, I'd like to turn the program over to Tom, and he will lead us through the priorities, the goals, and the milestones of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Grant. And it's my task now to take us in a fairly short time through some of the highlights of the strategic plan. We decided early on to structure the college plan similar to the new university strategic plan. And that consists of strategic priorities, goals, and milestones under each priority. And then we tasked 4 working groups to work on each of the strategic priorities. So one group worked on one priority. The groups, in some cases, they changed the priorities slightly from the university language to adapt it to our college. But in general, we're going with the same strategic priorities. We then asked our working groups to develop goals for each of the priorities, and then ultimately milestones. And so that will be the structure that I'll show as I go through. I want to mention I'm not going to show all of the milestones in the interest of time, but encourage you to go to strategicplan.cals.vt. Do I have that right? Or vt.cals. How is that, Zeke? I can't remember which one.
It's just right on the homepage. It's cals.vt.edu. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, great. And we'll mention that again, but I encourage you to look at the full strategic plan, please. And I also want to mention that unless it's otherwise stated, we have set 2025 as the date by which we want to achieve the milestones in the strategic plan. So let's go right into strategic priority 1, which is advance excellence in research, teaching, and extension for the Commonwealth and beyond. And so this priority is really focused on, how can we continue to be and continue to advance in excellence across all of the missions of our college, teaching, research, and extension. And so our goals are fairly simple, 3 goals that relate to advancing excellence across each of our missions. Next slide, please. We actually have 6 milestones under this strategic priority, but we'll highlight 3 here, and again, encourage you to look online to see the others. As a college, we're committing ourselves to 100% of our academic majors having required experiential learning and durability skill components by 2025. So in other words, all of our students would have experiential learning as part of their portfolio before they graduate. We have set a goal of diversifying and increasing extramural expenditures by 20% and an increase in 10% of our numbers of departmental, intercollegiate, national, and international collaborations. Next slide, please. Strategic priority 2 is outward facing. In other words, it really, in this priority, we're focusing on how our college can live out ut prosum, that I may serve. And so here you can see that our goals relate to, first, addressing critical challenges that face our society, including environmental, health, economy, and food challenges, and with the goal of building diverse and inclusive communities in Virginia and around the world. Increasing the global impact and visibility of our college, and supporting that lifelong learning that Dean Grant just mentioned. Next slide, please. We have 7 milestones under priority 2, but again, we're highlighting 3 here. We would like to see a 10% increase in the impact of our college as measured by things such as inventions, job creation, social change, business startups, and economic and health impacts. We'd also like to see a 10% increase in enrollment in our majors, minors, and courses, and improved placement of our graduates in emerging fields of endeavor. We also hope for a 10% increase in partnerships with stakeholders and participation in public events. Next slide. And I do want to mention at this point that you'll notice that most of the milestones are numerical. In other words, we tried very hard, and our working groups did great work to come up with milestones that we can actually measure our progress toward. Okay, strategic priority 3 is somewhat inward looking. in this strategic priority, we're really focusing on how can we be the best possible place for faculty and staff to work and for students to study. And so we have 4 goals that we've outlined. And here, our goals are: how do we attract, retain, and develop the talents of a diverse group of faculty and staff across all of our missions? We have a goal to align our salaries with land-grant peers, to attract, retain, and ensure degree completion of our students, and increasing representational diversity across our missions and among faculty, students, and staff. Next slide. We have 7 milestones under this priority, but here we're highlighting 3. We will increase diversity of faculty and staff in leadership roles, and we'll achieve that through increasing participation in leadership development opportunities on campus and off campus. Our goal is that in the employee climate survey that we achieve 75% faculty and staff satisfaction with career advancement opportunities and work-life balance. We also are shooting for a 10% annual increase in numbers of underrepresented minority and underserved students in the college. And again, these are all set for 2025. That's the date by which we want to achieve these. Next slide, please. The final strategic priority 4, is called Ensure Institutional Excellence. And so this is really about how can we be the most efficient and effective college possible. We've set 4 goals, and that includes enhancing the physical plant, enhancing our technological capabilities across our statewide campus, developing and fostering mutually beneficial relationships internally and externally, and developing sustainable financial models for how we carry out our work. And then finally, and Dean Grant has already alluded to this, developing an adaptive and inclusive process for continuous strategic planning. And that's one of the things that we believe will make this strategic plan different and unique from strategic plans we've had in the past. And that is this continuous process for continuing to evaluate our progress and to figure out ways to increase our momentum toward achieving the milestones that we've set out in the plan. Next slide. So I'm highlighting 3 milestones under strategic priority 4. The first one relates to philanthropic giving, and within 2 fiscal years, we hope to achieve $8.5 million in annual fundraising. We will develop a 3-year strategic plan that outlines facility needs for renovation, for construction, equipment, and continually update that plan. And then by 2021, or just next year, we will develop a process for annually updating our progress toward our goals and milestones. And this will be a critical part of our continuous strategic planning process. Next slide, please. So there are many ways that you can be involved, that our stakeholders and our friends can be involved in this process. This is an aspirational strategic plan. One thing that you have no doubt noticed is we have not yet outlined how we will achieve the milestones. What are those concrete steps that we are taking and we will take in order to achieve the milestones? Well, that will be the next step of work, and those are the implementation plans. And I'll say just a bit more, another word about that in just a moment, but there's ways for our alumni to be involved. Our alumni do contribute, and we hope they will continue to contribute by helping with our students' education, by providing experiential learning opportunities, speaking to classes, and just engaging with our faculty and staff. Our industry partners can be vital parts of our progress toward our strategic plan by partnering with us on various kinds of ventures. And of course, we know that our faculty and staff are really the ones who are going to do the hard work of moving us toward achieving all of these ambitious milestones that we've set out. So the implementation plans are the next step, and the implementation plans, and there will be several of them. We don't even have them all outlined yet, but the implementation plans will, for specific areas, outline those steps that we are already taking at the college level and that we will take at the college level in order to achieve our milestones. As units, such as departments and our agricultural research and extension centers, come up with their strategic plans and their implementation plans, those will feed into and add to the steps that the college is taking in the implementation plans. So as an illustration, I would like to hand this over in just a moment to Siobhan Thorpe. Zeke introduced her. Siobhan is our Director of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity for the college. And Siobhan is leading the work on our first implementation plan, and that is our diversity implementation plan. So I'd like to hand it over to Siobhan so that she can give you insight into this important work and also illustrate how our implementation plan process will be working over the next few months. So Siobhan, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to acknowledge and thank Dean Grant and Dr. Thompson for inviting me to come and share with all of you, the CALS members, on the progress that we've made as implementing or creating this diversity implementation plan. So on the slide you see before you, it's really showing us an overall summary of kind of where we are as a working group with the development of this plan. And so I first want to start off with what's the goal. And this has already been kind of pre-articulated, but just to reiterate that, the goal of the implementation plan is to really provide a framework, right? So rationalizing these actionable steps, which helps the college make very clear and intentional progress towards those goals and milestones, which were highlighted by Dr. Thompson earlier. Also creating appropriate metrics for how we measure our achievement along these aspirational long-term goals. What helped to guide this plan development? So we use several different things to help guide the development. One, of course, is the strategic plan that's being unrolled today. So making sure that the action steps align to the goals, align to the milestones, also incorporating the VT principles of community. And in addition, we're also being intentional about aligning our action steps to the university's inclusive VT priority areas. So in addition to those 4 priority areas in the strategic plan, you see listed here the 4 inclusive VT priority areas. 1, advancing the academic mission, obviously through inclusion and diversity. 2, increasing faculty, staff, and student diversity. 3, ensuring a welcoming, affirming, safe, and accessible campus climate. And then 4, institutionalizing structures to promote sustainable transformation. A bulk of the information, in addition to what we just highlighted, really came from the CALS community. And so I want to pause and say thank you to CALS members who really contributed their voice, contributed their stories through a lot of various avenues. So over the last 2 years in which I've been in this position, we've conducted targeted diversity and inclusion survey data from various departments and units across the college, in addition to listening sessions with several CALS community members, faculty, staff, and students. It also included the 2018 campus climate survey, things of that nature. We looked and evaluated that data. The call to action survey, which was sent out around June of this year in response to a lot of the kind of racial injustice that was going on this summer. So all of these things were collected, and in these listening sessions, in these surveys, we have actual data. And again, thank you for those who kind of were operating in that brave space and told us our stories. So we have actual data and observational data, which really address the following questions. How can we build and maintain a successful and inclusive CALS community? What are some barriers to adopt the principles of community? And what can you as an employee or a CALS member do to support and encourage inclusion, in the college? So all of those things were taken into account when developing our action steps. In addition to finally research and benchmarking across the college, making sure when we're looking at metrics, representational data, where are we amongst our respective peers and land grant institutions as well. So like Dr. Thompson mentioned earlier, we plan on this implementation plan, much like the strategic plan, being a very living document, right? And so I'm going to highlight some areas in which myself and the working group, I'll pause and give a huge shout out and a special thanks to the individuals listed to the left of the slide who are working alongside me and helping to craft this implementation plan. So some highlights, and this is again not the full plan, but once it gets rolled out, we hope that everyone in the college sees themselves in it. So what are some highlights of the implementation plan? So the first one really is looking at proactive DEI, and when I say DEI, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. So proactive DEI practices around recruitment and retention. So what does that entail? So this could entail looking at the development of a diversity recruitment guide for search chairs, the mandatory use of diversity statements and diversity advocates in all hiring decisions, creation of a college level retention plan for all employees in addition to students, and also allocation of funds to support units and departments to post jobs on diversity-centered websites. Secondly, we're looking at increasing communication and accountability at all levels within the college. So what does this look like potentially? This kind of section, we've talked about valuing efforts or placing intentional value on efforts with faculty, staff, and students to really promote participation in mentoring, training, professional development activities through such strategies as maybe providing time release, rewarding contributions to diversity and inclusion during performance appraisal, merit, and promotion decisions. We're also looking at revamping the CALS Diversity Council that's underway to better reflect the college's composition to be more strategic. This can also include systematic review of all policies and procedures to ensure compliance and to align operations. And also, and lastly, last but not least, looking at requiring and embedding diversity, inclusion, and climate content in college and department trainings and workshops, especially for those that are involved in teaching, supervisory, student-facing, customer service, and decision-making roles. Another highlight that I'd like to put forth today is really looking at creating culturally relevant advising and service models across the college. And we already do this pretty well, I would like to say, for all of the advising models across the college, but really taking a closer look at this, making sure that our advising and service models are sensitive to the individual student needs, maybe providing resources and incentives to support new and existing departmental and program-based multicultural organizations. So with that, those are some of the highlights of the plan. I would like to say again, once this is released, this is intended to be a very living document, and it'll take all of us as a college community to assure that we meet our aspirational goals. And with that, I'd like to stop and turn it back over to Dean Grant.
Great, thank you, Siobhan. I think that's really a great example of an implementation plan, at least the start of one, of what we envision doing across the entire strategic plan and some of the other areas as well. I wanted to show this slide here. I mentioned that we would be showing the working group members at the end here. And so what you're seeing here are those that were involved in working groups as the 4 working groups. And I think the steering committee members are on here as well. So we wanted to thank those folks and everyone else that worked with them. to gather information and create the strategic plan. And also many thanks to Aaron McCann and Lauren Henson from the University Office of Strategic Affairs. And of course to Tom Thompson for serving as our coordinator of the strategic plan too. I think he did a great job keeping the process moving forward and getting us to this point. And again, many thanks to everyone that provided input throughout the process. So I think we'll stop at this point. We have some time and would be happy to take questions at this time.
Great. Well, thank you for the three of you for laying that out. That sounds wonderful and fascinating. We do have a couple questions coming in, and I will again encourage people on the link that Alan sent out for where this is being hosted. There is a survey, Qualtrics survey there where everybody can submit questions and we'll try to get to them all. Alan, as you can imagine, COVID is on everybody's mind these days. So the first question is, how has our experience adjusting programs during COVID impacted the strategic plan?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, we talked a lot about that because the working groups were well underway when the pandemic began impacting us here, and we decided that we would continue working through developing the strategic plan on the timeline that we had set forth from the beginning. And I was really pleased that the working groups were willing to do that, and they continued to meet, and they transitioned to Zoom sessions as needed throughout the process. And the reason that we really wanted to continue the process was because we can't stop. We have aspirations for the college and its programs and people, and we felt that we needed to plow forward and not stop because the world doesn't stop. The world's going to keep moving, and we need to keep, as a land-grant university and a land-grant college, we have to continue to serve our communities and our industries. So we felt it was really important to keep going. Now, as we move into implementing the strategic plan, yeah, the pandemic may impact some things. How quickly we're able to progress on some of the milestones, some of the action items we take. A lot of these things require resources, and of course that if we have changes in resources, that may impact some of our action items and implementation plans. But I think we've probably learned a lot because of COVID-19, and we can probably do some things. We probably learned some things that we can incorporate in some of our implementation plans as we move forward too. So I don't know, Tom or Siobhan, if you want to add anything. Good question.
Great. Siobhan, I think the next one's for you. The question is, how are we going to be inclusive to all religions?
Zeke, thank you for that question. I think it's a really good question, and it's one that we need to consider when we're going for not only the implementation plan, but how to look at how we're governing ourselves as individual members of the college. And to that effect, I would say first we need to focus on showing mutual respect. And that's every single member of the college, not just administration or departmental leadership. So as you're engaging with your colleagues, asking yourself the following questions. Have you built a psychologically safe culture in your team and or environment, right? Can all people bring their full self to the table as they participate in work activities? Secondly, we need to recognize and reduce microaggressions. Are we avoiding stereotypes and bias? So that's a self-reflective type of mentality that I empower all of us to do. And then I wouldn't say lastly, I think there's several ways that we can do this. We need to start being creative about accommodating religious practices and observances. So there's no illusion that the US calendar is based on Christianity, right? So the US calendar is based on that. And so we would probably need to, as a college and even as departments and units, take a look at how flexible we're being with faculty, staff, and students who have different religious observances than the kind of larger norm. So are we creating or allowing flexible work schedules? What does that conversation look like with supervisors as well? So one thing I would also say is we need to check our language, and this can be done as individuals and also at the college level. So creating some kind of template, if there's questions around that, checking our language, checking our policies, checking our procedures for that language, which could be exclusionary of individuals of different religious observances and practices. So that's a couple of ways in which I think we can work as individuals and collectively to build a more inclusive religious environment for everyone in the college.
Great, thanks, Siobhan. Next couple questions actually are about Virginia Cooperative Extension. And the first one is, what does the budget future hold for Extension? Alan, I don't know if that would want to take that one. You're muted, Alan.
Sorry about that. Thank you for that question. That's a good question. It relates to resources that we need to implement the strategic plan too. So all indications right now show that for the current fiscal year, we'll probably have a budget that's very similar to previous fiscal year. In other words, we'll have a flat budget. We're not going to see increases, but we're not going to see big cuts either in the current fiscal year. That's being finalized at the university level, and we're expecting it to be fairly flat for Agency 229. Now, where there is some uncertainty is going into the next fiscal year, and a lot of that depends on the impact of COVID-19 on Virginia's economy and how long that will continue to have some impact. So we are concerned about the budget moving into fiscal year 22. But we have great stakeholders support, and I think we're a land grant college, and we have external stakeholders that rely on us, and they support us, and so across the Commonwealth, I think our friends in Richmond are going to hear the importance of supporting the land grant college and the land grant university. So we are concerned about the future budget, but we're also optimistic that we'll continue to have resources. We may have to do some things differently, but we'll have resources to do some great programs to meet our stakeholder needs. So a lot of uncertainty, but we're still optimistic for the future.
Alan, actually just one more question here about extension as well. The question is, what is Virginia Cooperative Extension strategic plan, and how does it really dovetail into what you've been talking about today?
Yeah, so what my understanding, what Virginia Cooperative Extension is doing is they're not necessarily developing a separate strategic plan, but what they are doing is they're developing an organizational effectiveness plan. And they're going through this exercise and working very closely with the college strategic plan. And so what I expect to see are some things in implementation plans on VCE and perhaps some strategic priorities, some new priorities perhaps with VCE as a result of this organizational effectiveness planning. And that's a dynamic process. So again, it's continuous planning, like we've talked about with the college plan, and I think we'll see a similar approach with the organizational effectiveness plan in VCE.
Thanks, Alan. Siobhan, I think we're back to you for this next question. It is, how would the new executive order called Combating Race and Sex Stereotype have any impact on our goals in diversity and inclusivity that you've been speaking about?
Thanks for that question. In short, the answer is it's not going to have any impact I can share with you that the diversity directors have been in conversation with the Office of Inclusion and Diversity, which has largely been in conversation with the Office of the President. And so while there's not been a uniform or university level kind of statement put out, we have been made aware that the current executive order does not affect any diversity or inclusion trainings that is occurring across the university. We have a letter or information that you can search up yourself, but we have received a letter the university has from Craig Lean, who is a director in the Department of Labor Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs. And in that letter, it lays out very clearly what the president's new order does and does not do. So it does not prohibit workplace training about non-discrimination and equal opportunity. That training is still important. The Labor Department still encourages that, and in some instances will still require that type of training. The new order does not prohibit diversity training offered to American employees, which includes us at Virginia Tech and within CALS. Training like diversity training still emphasizes the importance to recognize the value and worth of people of all races, creeds, etc. The president's order also does not prohibit trainings about preconception or biases that people may have regardless of race and or sex. About people who are different and which could cause even slight or even discrimination that's not intended. What the order does prohibit through its instruction is federal contractors that tell workers that because of their particular race or sex, that they are racist, morally culpable, or less worthy of being heard. And so that's what the language does in that executive order. So in short, it will not impact any diversity inclusion trainings or implementations at the college or university level.
Great, thanks for Sean for that. Tom, I think this might be a good one for you. How would you, will you again describe let me start this over. Will you again describe when the implementation will be available and where we'll be able to find it? This will be valuable for the development of departmental and unit strategic plans.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question, Zeke. The implementation plans will, eventually they will all be available on our strategic planning website. What we're expecting at this point is that CALS administration will largely lead the development of the implementation plans, but also with some participation and some leadership from outside the administration as well. There will be a number of these. I just can't right now give you a number because we haven't fully decided it, but certainly we're going to have one that's the diversity implementation plan. And that's a good example. Siobhan is our Director of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity is leading that effort. So in terms of the timeline, I think what I would hope is that we can begin the work on each implementation plan this fall. And make some good progress before the end of 2020, and then complete that work relatively early in the spring. And so I would say for those who are developing unit strategic plans and implementation plans, just reach out to me. And if you have, I will be happy to update you with progress to date, if that can help you in the process. I hope that answers that, Zeke.
I think it does, yes. Actually, Tom, while we got you there, one more question for you. How does the strategic plan interact with the plan of work priorities that have already been defined for NIFA?
For NIFA?
Correct.
Okay, so NIFA, the National Institute for Food and Agriculture, USDA, if I am interpreting the question correctly, NIFA outlines 6 high priority research areas: food security, climate variability and change, water, sustainable bioenergy, childhood obesity prevention, and food safety. And so what I would say is we are incredibly well aligned, I think, with that. We have very strong expertise in virtually all of those areas. And I think also if you look at the solar system diagram that Dean Grant put up, and our 5 high priority areas. And again, this is not an exhaustive list of the areas we work in, but ours are comprehensive health and wellness, community empowerment, predictive environmental solutions, cultivating lifelong learners, and resilience and productivity through innovation. The words are different, but I think we align very well with the NIFA priority areas.
Great. Well, we are nearing the end of the hour, and that is actually the end of our questions as well. So I just want to remind everybody, the website is live now. You can go to cals.vt.edu, and under the menu, under the About section, you can read the entire plan and dive deeper into it. It's a print-on-demand version there as well, so I encourage everybody to look at that. And I'll turn it back over to Alan to wrap it up for us.
All righty. Thank you, Zeke. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. If you have colleagues who weren't able to join us today, yeah, this is being recorded, so please refer them to the recording. And many thanks to my colleagues that joined me here this morning to present the plan, and special thanks to Zeke and the communications and marketing team. They do a great job for us here, and I think you'll like what you see on the website too, and the way that is designed. And many thanks to the communications and marketing team for their good work on that. I appreciate all that you do, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to be engaged in the process through the development of these implementation plans. And I know units are working on their strategic plans, and they'll be developing action plans as well. And I'm really excited about how all of this will come together and really allow us to make progress as a college, but also contribute to the university's ambitious planning. So again, thank you all very much. I hope you have a great day and a great weekend. And